77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, everybody, on this July 4th weekend. And boy, if you're in the New York, New Jersey, tri-state area, you couldn't ask for better weather than we had July 3rd, July 4th, July 5th, and now July 6th. 84 degrees, sunny, no humidity. Embrace it, my friends. Just think back to some horrible late March day when it's 38 and sleeting and there's slush and it's windy. All right, appreciate the great weather. Appreciate the fact that we live in the greatest country in the world with one of the greatest presidents we have ever had. And, you know, the jury's still out. Let's see how Trump 2.0 is going. But so far, going pretty well. Big, beautiful bill passes. Supreme Court wins after wins as far as Trump being able to move ahead with his agenda without judges getting in the way. Border crossings down 99% without an inch of wall being added just based on rhetoric alone. Remarkable, right? You look at the unemployment rate and the jobs report that just came out, fourth straight month with a positive, exceeding expectations kind of jobs report where it's not government jobs being added, it's more in the manufacturing sector. And then obviously we're looking at GDP growth going to be about 5% in the second quarter, according to the Atlanta Federal Reserve. I could go down the line as far as inflation being in the 2% range, which remember Joe Biden north of 9% at one point. Gas prices way down as well since Trump took office. I could go through the list, but you tell me where the wins are and where the losses are in terms of wins and losses for Donald Trump, and it's almost all losses for Democrats who have no power in the Congress, clearly. We just saw that. In the Senate, obviously in the White House, in the Supreme Court, governorships, you go down the line, and this is a party in like Sherwood Forest type of wilderness right now as we enter post-July 4th week where, again, Trump says, I want that big, beautiful bill done by July 4th, and sure enough, he signs it on July 4th. Promises made, promises kept. And meanwhile, let's think back to a year ago, if you just want to be really thankful for where we are as far as 2025 and Trump being in office is concerned. This was Joe Biden on July 4th and somehow goes like the full diehard Hans Gruber route as far as getting his holidays mixed up somehow. Let's go to cut one. Go.
And we give thanks to our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, the extraordinary President of the United States, Joe Biden.
That's Kamala.
Ho, ho,
Ho, ho, ho.
ho. Happy Independence Day.
Oh, ho. Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho. To quote Hans Gruber in Die Hard. I mean, that's amazing. Ho, ho, ho. I mean, it's kind of warm out. I get maybe if you mix up, Flag Day with, Arbor Day or something, but July 4th with Christmas? Ho, ho, ho. No, no, no. Oh, it's a whole ball of wrong. I swear to God. Anyway, meanwhile, the Democratic Party, I brought them up before, and one truly horrible person in the Congress is a guy named Jamie Raskin, Democrat, Maryland, in the House of Representatives. Here's him somehow explaining that while the riots in Los Angeles were under control, there were also literally riots going on at the same time. I've never seen verbal gymnastics like this before, but sure enough, you're about to hear it, and that's cut two. Go.
Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass had the situation under control in California. It was like mass, nonviolent, peaceful protests, and then there was a 8 or 10 block area where there were riots happening.
What? So they had it under control except for that 10-block area where there were riots happening. He literally said that in the same sentence with just one comma in between. That is utterly remarkable. how this could be spun. And again, it's just like we saw in 2020, mostly peaceful riots happening in places like Wisconsin and Minnesota and Portland and Seattle. The fact that they could justify this on one hand and say it's not happening on the other, but they really are actually happening, but it's only to a small couple of 10 blocks of a major city. It's like the same thing that we saw. I can't get over that he said that. It's unbelievable. Where we heard from Martha Raddatz of ABC News, and she's interviewing J.D. Vance, and this is right before the election. And she says, well, it's only a handful of apartment complexes that have been taken over by Venezuelan violent gangs. And Vance is just sitting there, and he says, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a couple of apartment complexes? Like, what is acceptable at this point as far as what Democrats will endure and what they won't endure? And then again, there are some principled Republicans out there, like Bill Kristol. Remember Bill Kristol when he was kind of respected to a certain extent? I think he wrote for the Weekly Standard before that went under. And now he's this anti-Trump guy that no matter what Trump does, Trump finds a cure for cancer, he will somehow find a way to come out against that. And in this case, Bill Kristol, who just 10 years ago completely advocated for illegal immigrants, forget like the violent criminal ones, just in general, illegal immigrants to be deported out of the country. He was all for it. Well, he's like John Kerry. He was all for it until he was against it. And now Kristol's even going so far to saying that we not only need to stop deportations, but we have to end ICE and defund the Department of Homeland Security. No, really. Bill Kristol, cut 5, take it away.
DHS, really, I sort of had come around to defunding ICE about a month or two ago, but now I'm just on the defund DHS thing. Would this country ultimately be safer if there were no DHS? Maybe there should be TSA, I don't know. And
what? The country will be safer if we don't have a Department of Homeland Security? When we have hundreds, if not more, of terrorists who entered the country under Joe Biden, who Bill Kristol, by the way, endorsed before the 2024 election. And now he wants to defund DHS and defund ICE. He might as well be AOC at this point. He might as well be Mamdani at this point. Bill Kristol, Republican. Yeah, right. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation Show. Back with more in just a moment.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's bring in our first VIP guest. He is Steve Moore. He is a former senior economic advisor to President Trump, co-founder of, I guess you'd call it, would you call it Calm for Prosperity, Steve, as far as
Trump for Prosperity, exactly. Good to be with you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be with you. You're so great on Fox News every night, and honored to be on your show. By the way, the most important thing, Joe, is that on Saturday afternoons we have the More Money Show on WABC.
That's right. I was about to get to that because there's 1,000 different titles that you have. That's too funny. Obviously, yes. It's a great show, by the way. I mean, that's what's great about WABC, by the way, because we have live programming like throughout, the weekend when everybody else is in tape or, whatever. So that's
exactly
always a good thing. And obviously Club for Growth founder as well. So Stephen, as far as the big, beautiful bill is concerned, I see polls that say, well, it's kind of unpopular, and big bills tend to be like that. I always think back to the ironically named Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and then as the years went on, people kind of came to embrace it. Now a majority actually support Obamacare. I'm not remotely comparing this bill as far as benefits, if you want to call them that, to Obamacare. But in this case, all I think about is if this doesn't pass and those tax cuts expire, then Democrats would be taking over the House for sure in 2026. And obviously the Trump administration, all the successes would go sideways if this didn't pass. So that's the biggest benefit I see out of this. But what else do some people need to know about the big, beautiful bill besides the tax cuts being extended?
Yeah, well, how much time have you got? I mean, this actually, this is a fantastic bill. So let me say this, that you got it right, except you left out one thing, that if, the most important thing is if this bill had not passed and the Democrats had their way, we'd be dropping the tax equivalent of a nuclear bomb on the U.S. economy in January, which would be a $4 trillion tax increase. Apparently, the Democrats wanted that to happen because they all voted against the Trump bill, which I think was disgraceful, frankly. We used to be in the 60s, 70s, 80s. The Democrats were for supply-side tax cuts, too. It was not a partisan issue. So shame, shame, shame. And look, I'm not a rah-rah Republican either. I don't think they're the solution to all our problems. But for the Democrats to all be against growth and prosperity, I don't quite understand it. So I just wrote a column, Joe, basically asking a question, is this the most conservative victory in 50 years? And it may well be. I mean, if you look at this bill, it's not just the tax cut, it's expansion of school choice, it's expansion of health savings accounts, so Americans have more control of their health care dollars. We got rid of the electric vehicle mandate. We got rid of the student loan bailouts of Biden era. We have work requirements now for food stamps and Medicaid, which the vast majority of Americans support. So, I mean, it could go on, but this is a big victory. I don't love everything in the bill, but 90% of it is very pro-growth. And I think, lastly, Joe, I think you're going to see a big boom in the stock market. We saw a 300-point increase in the Dow right after the bill passed. I think you're going to see, quite a nice boom market over the next year.
And that's the thing, Steve, and we're talking to Steve Moore as far as, you don't have to like everything in this bill, but here's the thing, and, you see the Thomas Massey's of the world, maybe the most useless member of Congress this side of AOC. I mean, just perpetually votes no on everything and never offers an alternative solution. I don't mind if you vote no. I don't mind if you vote on principle. But the fact that this guy just reflexively says no to everything is remarkable. So you take him away as a Republican vote. Mike Johnson has almost zero room for error in the Congress. John Thune only has a 1 or 2 vote margin in the Senate when you consider that, Tom Tillis is on his way out the door, so he's going to be anti-Trump, so we get that next CNN gig, I suppose. But overall, the fact that all these cats, dude, were herded in this case, and they were able to push this over the finish line on the day Donald Trump won it, by the way. I won it at my desk on July 4th, and sure enough, there it is. But they had to make compromises. If you want Lisa Murkowski on board, for example, you had to give a little there. You had to give to moderate Republicans to get them on board in the House. So that's the thing. It was impossible to have a perfect bill because the numbers simply weren't there in the House or the Senate.
Yeah, so, I very rarely admit that I'm wrong, Joe. Very rarely. But, I was wrong about this. For the last 3 weeks, people said, can they get this done by July 4th? I said, no way. I mean, there's no way. But it shows the power of Trump and the persuasiveness of Trump. He just carried the Congress on his back, said, get this on my desk by 4th of July. And, yes, Mike Johnson, who I think is a superb speaker. I mean, I am nothing but admiration for him, for what he pulled off. It ain't easy. And John Thune as well. And he's new to the job as well for the leader of the Senate. So I'm saluting both of those guys for an amazing job getting to 50 votes in the Senate plus the tie-breaking vote by the vice president. And what did we pass this by? A 2-vote margin in the House. That is a great feat, and it's a great. But look, let's keep politics out of this. This is really good bill for America. It's good for our economy. It's good for prosperity. It's good for low-income areas. How about the fact that we expanded opportunity zones for low-income areas? I didn't hear the Democrats talking about that. I thought they cared about inner cities and things like that. So a lot in this bill is going to help the lowest-income Americans.
And that's the whole thing, Steve, is that so many things in here were concessions for what Democrats used to be completely and totally for, including border security, by the way, right? If you go back to Barack Obama, who was called the deporter-in-chief, divisively, right? Because liberals were the extreme ones anyway, like, oh, but you're being too aggressive on this, and same with Bill Clinton as well. And now we obviously see border security in this as well. And I have to put politics back into this. I know we should take politics out of it because from an economic perspective, you're right. I think we're going to see a huge boom in the stock market, which, by the way, in April, everybody said that their 401ks were completely vanishing.
Oh, I know.
The stock market is up about 5% since Trump took office. So all of that's been recovered and then some, and it's going to even take off. A lot of people think from here. I mentioned before the Atlanta Fed sees GDP growth at 4.6% in the second quarter. We were told that we can't get above 3% ever again.
Right.
So that's pretty huge. But I'm going to put politics back into this because I got to get your reaction to Representative Jason Crow, Democrat, goes on CNN, of course, and is talking about how this bill may actually literally kill people. This is cut 4, guys. Go.
I've been talking to my constituents. I've been reading their letters, the fear, the anxiety. I mean, there are literally people that I'm talking to that I represent, Pam, who don't know if they're going to literally survive this.
I think it was a Democrat that once said, Steve, FDR, that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And this is what Democrats are running on at this point, just fear-mongering around this bill. Will it be effective going into 2026 when they talk about 11 million people, for example, being kicked off Medicaid because we actually have this thing called a work requirement now, which at last check, that's something that Bill Clinton supported when he was in office, Democrat, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great point. So I'm an old guy, and I remember when Newt Gingrich took the House back in '95, and what we called the Republican Revolution back then, and we did it, by the way, in combination with Bill Clinton, who was a pretty fiscally conservative president after all, and we did pass work requirements for welfare programs. It was very controversial, very controversial. You saw the same kinds of speeches back then, Joe, among the Democrats: blood in the streets, people are going to starve to death, et cetera. And even the Brookings Institute, which I think you would agree is a pretty liberal organization,
yes,
did the definitive study 5 years after welfare reform. They said, guess what? You know what happened, Joe? 90% of these people on welfare, they got jobs, they got into the labor force, they saw their incomes rise. Child poverty actually fell after the welfare reforms. Child and overall poverty fell because look, you can't get rich on welfare. Welfare is a trap. Yes. We let people out of the trap, and the only way you can advance economically is get a job and climb that economic ladder. So why is it that it worked under Bill Clinton, but now it's going to kill people?
That's the question of the day right now as we're talking to Steve Moore. And yeah, this bill is absolutely pro-growth, pro-capitalism, all the things that a Steve Moore supports. Yet then I see here in New York City a guy named Zoran Memdani currently leading in the polls to be New York's next mayor. And the thing is about this guy, besides being literally a communist, like in terms of the things that he supports in terms of seizing manufacturing, right, and government-run grocery stores and free universal child care. Gee, how are we going to pay for that? It doesn't quite give an answer outside of tax the rich, which already people in New York are quite taxed already. Well, here's Al Sharpton pronouncing Memdani's name in a very, very interesting way that only Al Sharpton could through a teleprompter, asking about Memdani actually pulling an Elizabeth Warren here and lying on a college application to Columbia University, saying that he's black when at last check he absolutely is not. Listen to this cut, Steve. You're going to love it. Cut 3, go.
Yeah. Now, a quick follow-up. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is attacking Memdani over reports that he identified himself as African American and Asian on college application. Memdani was born in Uganda, his parents from India. What are your thoughts on this issue? Memdani has checked multiple boxes trying to capture what he calls the fullness of his background. I mean, is this a real issue to you?
Is it a real issue? I forgot about that. He also said he was Asian, which is quite the turn. Unfortunately, Steve, we only have about 20 seconds, but your reaction to Memdani, however you pronounce it in Al Sharpton's world, being the possible next mayor of New York as a communist.
So I'm from Chicago, I think, as you know, Joe, and
yes.
We tried this in Chicago with Brandon Johnson, who is a communist as well, and a socialist, and he's destroyed the city of Chicago, and it breaks my heart. Let's not destroy New York City or Empire City in America.
Yeah, Brandon Johnson currently at 6% approval, which is like lice is more popular. Steve, we got to go, but thanks for joining on a Sunday morning. We really appreciate it.
You too, Joe. And remember, I came on your show in the condition that you come on my show in the weeks ahead. So I'm
there next week. Done deal, there.
Okay. Take care.
That's called live negotiation right there, guys, and it works. The pressure was overwhelming. Thanks, Steve.
I'm like Donald Trump.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Judge Jeanine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Joe Concha, the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show on this lovely Sunday afternoon here in the swamps of Jersey. Let's bring in Mary Thomas. She is the Faith and Freedom Coalition Executive Director. So glad to have you on, Mary. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, Joe. Thanks for having us on.
So what'd you do for July 4th? I got to hear all about it.
July 4th, we had a cookout right here and played cornhole. It was all-American July 4th. So wow. We live outside of D.C., and so we were waiting to see if we could see the bombers and the fighter jets come over. Unfortunately, we did not see them, but it was a great 4th, just celebrating America.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, I was just down in Leesburg my daughter is, despite being 11 years old and you know, an all-star soccer player, we have to travel like the country, like we're an MLS team almost. You know, we've been to San Diego, and then we had to go to North Virginia. It's so beautiful there. That's a gorgeous area. So I'm glad you had a great Fourth. I'm a two-time cornhole champion, by the way. I should let everybody know that. You know, I haven't played professionally in a while, but the point is, yeah, I dressed up as Patrick Henry. Apparently, I went to a party where everybody dresses up as the founding fathers, and we kind of do a play on the Declaration of Independence, and we pulled it off somehow. So yeah, it was perfect weather. Everything was great, and I'm glad you've enjoyed yourself. Some Democrats out there, however, Mary, were taking to the streets to protest angrily that Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy, and democracy must be saved by the party who literally installed a candidate in Kamala Harris for president without one vote from the public, which doesn't sound much like democracy for me, but nonetheless, it seems like conservatives, Republicans, whatever you want to call them, MAGA, they're the happy, cool people right now playing cornhole and enjoying fireworks and beers and hot dogs and baseball. And Democrats are just angry and petulant and just can't seem to find their way. I mean, can they reverse themselves out of it, or is unhinged anger just now the brand of the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, I think right now, unfortunately, what you're saying is true. Unhinged anger is what the Democratic Party is about. I mean, our country is a great country. We have so many benefits compared to other countries. Freedom, religious freedom. We just saw with the One Big Beautiful Bill that tax cuts. I mean, America is a wonderful place to be. We should be celebrating that. And instead, the Democrats are out there, you know, attacking everything, the foundations of our country, our founding fathers. They are encouraging political violence. It's just a very sad state of affairs. And we saw what happened in New York, you know, with Mamdani being elected. It's just, I mean, being elected, you know, being the nominee, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, they want socialism, but they don't realize that, you know, socialism is why a lot of people fled and came to this country, because we have freedom. So it's just, yeah, it's very, very sad.
It is sad. And the thing is, and we're talking to Mary Thomas of the Faith and Freedom Foundation Coalition, I should say. She's the executive director there. It's straight up communism. It's anti-Semitism. We've seen all these statements from Zoran Mamdani in the past. So, and this is being embraced not just by Democrats as far as this is the face of the Democratic Party. This is the future. You know, 33-year-old, you know, guy who just came to the country a few years ago, and now he wants to run government-run supermarkets and also having obviously a free universal child care and free, everything's free. He's the Oprah candidate. You know, you get a car and you get a car. Like literally that's what he sounds like. But I can't play this clip enough during the show. I already played it earlier in the show, but in case you're tuning in now, and even if you were listening before, it's just so good. It's Al Sharpton on MSNBC who really has just been having this losing battle against teleprompters for years now. And for whatever reason, despite having a show since I think he's had one on there for something like 20 years. He still can't read a simple teleprompter and pronounce simple names. In this case, Zoran Mamdani. I want your reaction to this, Mary, as far as Al Sharpton talking about how it's really no big deal that Mamdani on a college application said that he is actually Asian and or black, which is quite the combination. This is cut 3, guys, again. Go.
Now, a quick follow-up. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is attacking Mamdani over reports that he identified himself as African-American and Asian on college application. Mamdani was born in Uganda, his parents from India. What are your thoughts on this issue? Mamdani has checked multiple boxes trying to capture what he calls the fullness of his background. I mean, is this a real issue to you?
The fullness of his background? How is Asian in the fullness of his background or black? And here's the thing, Mary. If Elon Musk, because apparently if you're from an African nation, you could say you're black. So in this case, since Elon Musk is from South Africa, he could say that he is black and or Asian because he's from Africa. I guess that's the way this works. But, I mean, this didn't work out well for Elizabeth Warren, and I have a feeling that this could have an impact on Mamdani or Mamdani, or however Sharpton pronounces it. Take it away.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the root of this is, I mean, obviously he's disguising who he is. We know he comes from a wealthy family. He's claiming he's an ordinary person, which is what the left typically does. Instead, the Republican Party, we're the party of working people. We are the, the party of people who actually go to work and are not just, out there trying to game the system. And one of the things about this is this is an exact reason, why do we even have these systems in colleges that are judging and with businesses that are judging people based upon your skin color, right? That you get certain advantages based on your skin color. Everything should be based on merit. That's the way this country is. If you work hard, no matter what color you are, what you look like, you will be able to succeed. That's the American dream.
And we're talking to Mary Thomas. She is the executive director of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. That's the thing. Like, these protesters that are out there, do they have jobs? Because it seems like they could just protest every day. It seems like not a lot of work going on there. But just shift gears to a horrific story here as far as this flooding that's happening in Texas right now. Camp Mystic, obviously, a camp for young girls, basically got swept away. And I'm seeing Democrats, members of the media, which is synonymous with Democrats. Juliette Kamen, for example, she's a CNN analyst, I should say. And she says that this is all the fault of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Governor Abbott. This is while search for survivors' bodies is still being done. And I've seen multiple people like David Axelrod, also of CNN, blaming the Trump administration for cuts to the National Weather Service when we had multiple advance warnings 12 hours in advance of this happening, a flash flood warning 3+ hours in advance, and the river had surged 26 feet in barely 45 minutes. So, I hate to say that sometimes these horrible tragedies happen no matter how many warnings you put out there, that it comes fast and before you know it, that people aren't able to get out. But yet I'm seeing ghouls in the media while these young girls are still missing, perhaps dead, 14 already confirmed, that this is being politicized. It's just so depressing that we've come to a point where every time something happens, even when people are dead or missing, we have a media and we have Democrats that are just going to exploit it from the first minute on, and it's just sickening, quite frankly, Mary.
No, absolutely. It's very sad. It's a sad situation. We are praying for the families of those, the children who have been lost, the children who they are still trying to find. I mean, and it is a disgrace. My son just came back from camp. I can only imagine, can't even imagine how those the parents are feeling. But at this time, we should be uniting as a country and working to do everything we can to find the children that are there and help them. It's really not a time to be, as you said, politicizing what's going on. These are natural disasters. They occur. It's not, something, that should be blamed on Donald Trump or the administration. It's just, it really is a travesty that at this time we're not uniting as Americans and just doing everything that we can, focusing on getting the children back.
I've always wondered, Mary, if we had another 9/11, everybody came together, during that, basically, right? And George W. Bush, he's in the Bronx. That's obviously, deep blue New York, walks out Yankee Stadium, and the crowd just stood and cheered like you've never heard that stadium roar before. And then when he threw a perfect strike, the roar even got louder. And it's like, wow, Republican president goes to the Bronx, and everybody is behind him, behind the country, really, and cheering because, again, we were attacked, and we all come together as Americans. I wonder now if we had another 9/11. If it would just be pointing fingers in the blame game that we just talked about. Finally, I want to get to this majority decision in Wisconsin as far as the Wisconsin Supreme Court striking down an abortion ban in that state that dates back 176 years. It was a 4-3 ruling. Tell us more about that, and obviously this must be disappointing for those who are pro-life to see this ruling come down after, again, an abortion ban in the state that dates back 176 years.
Well, I think one of the key issues that you have to look at in this case is, once again, we have a judiciary that is stepping into the job of the legislature. Their decision was basically based upon the premise that, they said that the legislature impliedly repealed the abortion ban that was in effect when they adopted some new legislation related to abortion. The legislature, if they meant to repeal something, they would have stated that explicitly. It is not the job of the judiciary to, second guess or to make decisions for the legislature. This is about separation of powers. And we are seeing this a lot on the federal level as well, with Donald Trump and nationwide injunctions. Thankfully, the Supreme Court struck them down. But the legislature, mostly liberal judges are out there, not the legislature, I'm sorry, the judiciary, they are out there trying to basically make the law. And that is not their purpose in our system of government. One of the great things I'd like to say in the one big beautiful bill that happened is that forced taxpayer funding of abortions has stopped. Planned Parenthood was getting more than $2 million a day from the American taxpayer to fund their abortion operations and their transgender surgeries.
That's amazing. That $2 million a day. Good Lord, 365 days in a year. You can do the math on that one. And we're talking to Mary Thomas. Yeah, state. I want to make clear when I'm talking about abortion ban. I'm not talking about like a ban on all abortions. But state lawmakers adopted the ban in 1849, making it a felony when anyone other than the mother, quote, intentionally destroys the life of an unborn child, unquote. So just to be clear on exactly what that means and what just happened in Wisconsin. But anyway, Mary, I want to end on a happy note. So again, thanks for joining us. This is our first conversation, at least an interview outside of Off the Record by phone. And you were great. We really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend.
Thanks so much. You too, Joe.
All right. Thank you, Mary. And that's a great interview there. But from Mary, of course, the Faith and Freedom Coalition Executive Director. We will certainly have her back. And this is Joe Concha. This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel for Towers Foundation Show. Back with more in just a moment.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show.
Entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody. So my son is really into golf, and he's 9 years old, which is a great thing because, golfers tend to have very aesthetically pleasing wives, so that's a good thing to look forward to when you get older. And it's kind of it is a non-contact sport, and injuries are kind of a lot more rare anyway than they would be, say, if he played football, which he also plays flag anyway. Baseball, soccer, like these are all sports where obviously some crazy things can happen physically. But golf, for the most part, nice and tranquil. If it rains, you don't play. You always play usually in warm weather for the most part, the British Open being one of those rare exceptions. But overall, he's into golf. So I had him watch at least select scenes of Tin Cup, the ones not involving Rene Russo and a trailer for the most part, trailer park. But anyway, so he just loved the ending. I don't know if you've ever seen Tin Cup, but it came out, believe it or not, about 30 years ago. I believe it was 1996. And Costner is kind of this rogue golfer. He works at a driving range, basically. He always underachieved, has great talent, and then finally kind of gets himself together mentally and qualifies for the U.S. Open, and he's on the verge of winning it, except he has such a huge ego in terms of how hard and far he could hit a ball that on this hole where you're supposed to do what's called layup, in other words, your second shot, it's going to be really hard to get it on the green, and there's water separating the hole from the fairway, and every other golfer would lay up, in other words, shorter shot, right? Get about 3/4 the way there, and then use like a pitching wedge and get it up to the hole and get your birdie or your par. But in this case, Kevin Costner goes for it, and ball after ball keeps going in the water. he's down to his last ball, and he's going to be disqualified if he doesn't get it on the green. And sure enough, he not only puts it on. I won't spoil it, but it's a happy ending, even though he loses by a lot in the end. But anyway, so I explained to my son that Kevin Costner, arguably is the best sports films actor of all time, right? Like, there have been actors that have had great films that have been sports films. Like Gene Hackman comes to mind, for example, when you're thinking about Hoosiers, for example, and Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday, and I could go down the list, right? But overall, when you think about the body of work from Costner in terms of Bull Durham and Field of Dreams and the aforementioned Tin Cup, and there was one other movie, very good actually, Draft Day, where he plays the GM of the Cleveland Browns. But overall, there's one that kind of gets missed as far as movies are concerned with Costner, and that's called For the Love love of the game. And he's this, old pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. He's probably down to his last start. He starts in Yankee Stadium and ends up throwing a no-hitter against the Yankees when the Yankees are obviously always portrayed as like a great team. And then, they've won 27 championships. They've lost 6 straight, however, recently, and looked horrible in doing so, blowing lead after lead. Now they're actually 3 games out of first place. They're tied for second. They're on the verge of dropping to fourth. It's amazing what's happened with the Yankees. But before I go off on that tangent, this movie, is a great typical Costner movie, romantic side to it as well, with the late great Kelly Preston. But overall, it's a back and forth between his relationship with her, which is falling apart, and what's going on in this game where he's just, he doesn't have a great fastball anymore, and he's just kind of just throwing junk on his way to that eventual no-hitter. And the funny thing is, it's just been revealed in an interview that Costner just did with Michael Strahan, and this was for a podcast called The Sports Films Hall of Fame, and obviously Strahan played for the Giants. Obviously now he's everywhere on TV as far as ABC, not only doing Good Morning America, but then also he's on Fox, part of our pregame show over there as well. So Strahan's certainly a busy guy. But apparently, this is the first time Costner has shared this, and this is so funny because George Steinbrenner's birthday actually was just 2 days ago. He was born on July 4th, and obviously he passed away a couple of years ago. But Steinbrenner apparently canceled the initial shooting for this 1999 film, For the Love of the Game, at Yankee Stadium, because he was upset that the Yankees, the fictional Yankees, mind you, lost in the movie's ending. I mean, you can't make this up. So Costner says, now I'm thinking I'm dead unless I say something. And so he had to go to Steinbrenner and try to convince him that you please, we have to film this, and it has to be against the Yankees, because at the time, remember 1999, the Yankees were winning World Series after World Series with Derek Jeter and Bernie Williams and Jorge Posada, and I could go down the line as far as all the great players that were part of those teams. Bernie Williams, center field, Paul O'Neill, right field, but at this point, Steinbrenner's like, you are not going to have my team lose, even if it's in a film where no one's going to get upset about the fictional Yankees losing. But sure enough, that's what happened. And Costner says, quote, I said it's a meaningless game, George, and I'm going to treat the Yankees with the respect that you want them to be treated with. And eventually Steinbrenner gave in to doing the movie, but still, the fact that George was so competitive that he couldn't even have the fake Yankees lose, and I guess, getting no hit. I can't remember the last time the Yankees were no-hit. I don't even know if they have been no-hit, right? I mean, I don't recall them ever, but in my lifetime anyway. I'm sure I can look it up at 38 or something that may have happened. But overall, that's hilarious that this interview just came out, and I implore you to listen to it. You can find it on foxnews.com as far as Costner just having to go hat in hand to George Steinbrenner to beg him, dude, we have to film this movie at Yankee Stadium. It's a cathedral, and in the movie, the Yankees are treated with the utmost respect, and there you go. So I just found that to be hilarious. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is the Judge Jeanine Tunnel for Towers Foundation show. I want to thank Steve Moore, who is a tremendous guest, who joined us earlier in the show to talk about the big, beautiful bill. And again, guys, I can't stress this enough. If that bill didn't pass, and I know there's some fiscal conservatives out there saying, boy, there's too much spending. Well, guess what? If it doesn't pass, then the tax cuts that you all love so much, it would be a $4 trillion tax hike. And then Democrats, as sure as you were born, would sweep into power in 2026 by taking back the House, in the midterms, perhaps the Senate as well, and then you have perpetual impeachment of Donald Trump happening from there, and he would be completely and totally hamstrung. So this bill had to pass. There's a lot of benefits in it as far as work requirements for Medicare, as far as border construction being completed. So when a Democrat does come back into power, and that may happen one day, that's already there, and they'd have to tear the wall down if they wanted that to happen as well. And I could go on, but it is a big, beautiful bill, and Donald Trump, the victories just keep happening. Are you tired of winning it? Anyway, I'll see you next week on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel for Towers Foundation show. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Sunday Morning Show. You can hear Judge Janine's Tunnel to Towers Sunday Morning Show Sunday mornings at 10. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.